Hi, and welcome to my CISSP study guide. My name is Sio Rodriguez. I have a number of certifications, including the CISSP, and I have been working in the, IT and security for a long time. But anyway, so let's not talk about me. Let's just you can find me in LinkedIn if you want to know more about myself. So the first question is, obviously, I would hope that if you're going to be watching this video, at least you know what the CISSP is. But if you do not, then CISSP stands for Certified Information System Security Professional. It's a globally recognized certification in the field of information security. It's one of the most, I would say, popular one certification that a lot of employers would look for in a resume. So it's a very important certification to have. CISSP is offered by ISC Square, which stands for the International Information System Security Certification Consortium. That's a mouthful there, right? The CISSP certification is designed to validate the skills and knowledge of professionals working in the field of information security. And there is a lot of information on the ISC Square website. So I'm not going to go in detail. I will put the site as a reference in. You can Google it up, but I put it as a reference in the in this guide so you can learn more about it. All right. The CISSP has 8 domains, which we will all cover in this class. Now, the videos that we will present are not specifically in covering just per domains. We will cover all the material, but some of these domains are really huge. So I have divided some domains into different modules, different chapters to make it a little bit more manageable. Now, about the CISSP, one question that normally people ask is, is the CISSP certification worth it, or how much does a person certified in CISSP make? And obviously, you're going to get different answers depending on who you ask the question. What I'm going to tell you here, it's based on my own experience. So the answer to the question, is it worth it? And my response is absolutely yes, it is worth it. Now, according to, some major portals, here are some numbers. I don't know exactly how accurate these numbers are. I don't believe that just because you have a CISSP. Now, obviously, if you get this certification, it means that you have experience in at least in a couple of those fields in the 8 domains. My take on this is that a certification by itself, yes, it's worth it, it's important, but the true value of any certification is when it is combined with experience that you have. And obviously, even if you don't have a certification, the experience is what actually gives you the salary. Now, one important thing about this debate about whether certifications are worth it or not is the fact that many companies or many recruiters, just by having the the CISSP certification in your resume, you're gonna get a lot more interviews. If some companies are specifically looking for CIS certified people in all sectors, including the government, and if you don't have that, and a company is looking for a CISSP certified candidate, if you don't have it, one, you're out of it, right? So you're not going to get the interview. So absolutely, CISSP certification is worth it. If you are already working and you get it, most company will bump the salary. So I think that that's a no-brainer. But anyway, so that's a personal note. There is a lot of information about this on the internet. You can find information there. Anyway, so we're going to start with this first module, security governance through principles and policies, and we're going to be covering all the key points in this guide. Now, this is just a guide. You may need probably a lot more information on some of these topics, but at least I'll give you all the gist and the important things that you need to understand. Now, I'm hoping that when you do this guide, you have some uh, understanding, some knowledge of some of these concepts. If you are in IT or in general and more in cybersecurity, then a lot of these things will be a refresher. Some things will be new, right? But this will going to be definitely a very complete guide with all the information that you need to pass the CISSP certification. Okay. So the first thing, obviously, that you need to understand, not just for the CISSP, but anything cybersecurity, is you need to understand the CIA Triad elements of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And if you have taken any class, this is something that it's not new, right? But anyway, so we need to talk about this. It sounds simple, this CIA Triad, but actually, when you start implementing these things, it's very complex, and there's a lot to it, right? So confidentiality is the principle that objects are not disclosed to unauthorized subjects. In other words, information, right? Uh, you know, informations are not disclosed to unauthorized subjects. As a matter of fact, when we work in IT and cybersecurity, confidentiality is one of the things that we try to protect the most. Integrity is the principle that objects retain their veracity and are intentionally modified only by authorized subjects. In other words, we have to make sure that information is not modified by unauthorized subject. Imagine that you send the human resources departments, send an email to accounting saying that, hey, this individual is going to be paid, I don't know, $100,000, and then you change that to $150,000. Or imagine, for example, that some students, hack into the database of a university, and if someone, get a C, they would bump that to an A, right? Actually, and that has happened many times. So we would try to protect the integrity. Availability is the principle that authorized subjects are granted timely and uninterrupted access to objects. In other words, it is very important that we can access information and systems whenever we need to do our job. If something happens and we cannot access that information, well, that is a problem. We live in an era in which ransomware attacks are very common. Normally, in a ransomware attack, the information of a company, critical information, it's encrypted and it is not available. So that's a problem with availability. So we need to make sure that whatever we do, we have controls in place to protect against availability. This is a picture of the CIA Triad. And again, notice in the center that the
it's important to notice that the whole point, right, about this whole security thing is to protect data, right? So that's what we want to do. We want to protect the confidentiality, the integrity, and we want to make sure that that data, that information, it's available whenever we need. It's important to notice that even though uh, the CIA tried, the CIA has nothing to do with the Central Intelligence Agency, obviously. And the reason why they put CIA is because it's easy to, I guess, to pronounce or whatever. But if you think about it, one of the most important things is availability, right? Because if information is not available, then you cannot protect confidentiality, integrity. In other words, both of this depends on the data being available. It's important to keep that in mind, right? So that's point number one over there. Now, some concepts, conditions, and aspects of confidentiality that are important to understand, and you're going to get questions related to this. So these are some key terms. Sensitivity, which refers to the quality of information which could cause harm or damage if disclosed. Discretion is an active decision where an operator can influence or control disclosure in order to minimize harm or damage. Criticality, which is the level to which information is mission critical in its measure of criticality. And when we are protecting system, this is very important. You need to put more controls and more effort and more money on critical data and systems, right? There's some system that may not be that critical when you don't spend too much on that, right? The higher the level of criticality, the more likely the need to maintain the confidentiality of the information. It's very important to keep that in mind. Another important concept that we need to understand is concealment, which is also related to confidentiality, which is the act of hiding or preventing disclosure, right? Often concealment is viewed as a means of cover, obfuscation, or distraction, right? The related concept of concealment is security through obscurity, which is the concept of attempting to gain protection through hiding, silence, or secrecy. So whatever you do, right? But if something, uh, if someone doesn't have to see something or know something, whatever, just make sure that person doesn't see it. For example, we talk about phishing is one of the most common attack vectors nowadays, and phishing is basically through email. Now, you would say, well, let me try to conceal my email address. Let me make sure that nobody finds my email address. Well, in some business, that's impossible because for some business, you need that email to be available. If you are an executive of a company, if you want to be found, your email address have to be available. So that means that all criminals and people with bad intentions can have that email, and they will attempt to, uh, they will send you phishing emails to see if you fall in the trap, right? But anyway, but it's important that, if you don't have to disclose information like in social media, Facebook, and, X, the X Twitter platform, whatever it may be, some businesses, they make money actually being publicly available. All the things, they may things that you may not want to put it out there. So the more things that it's available for your business or for yourself out there, the more vulnerable that you become, that you are. But in the same time, it may be a business need because that's how you make money, right? You want people to actually find you. Another term is secrecy, which is the act of keeping something a secret or preventing the disclosure of information. Like you want your password to be a secret. You want your public IP addresses to be, even though there are ways of getting this information, but your personal information, your healthcare information, right? You need to keep that secret, which is all of this is related to privacy, which refers to keeping information confidential that is personally identifiable or that might cause harm, embarrassment. It could be just embarrassment or disgrace to someone if revealed. If you have, I don't know, if you have, pictures of confidential pictures that you have with your partner, with your girlfriend, whatever that may be, you may not want that to be found by certain people. So you want to have that secret, that privacy. As human beings, we are entitled to certain level of privacy. But unfortunately, nowadays, it is extremely difficult. Almost everything is out there, at least for some people. Some people are more um, privacy conscious than other, but it is a big problem. And we were going to be talking about all these concepts as we move along. Seclusion, it involves storing something in an out of the way location, likely within a strict access control. So if you are in an office and you have sensitive information, you don't want that, being seen by other people around you, or maybe a place where a lot of people, come in and go and stuff like that. Or, there are a lot of facilities. For example, there's some Microsoft and AWS data centers that, we know the regions where they are, but you may not know exactly what they are. The government has a lot of facilities that are secluded, right? So that people do not know what they are. Integrity is dependent on confidentiality and access control. Now, when it comes to, so we just talked about confidentiality. Now, the other members of the CIA Triad is integrity, and some of the concepts related to integrity are accuracy, which is being correct and precise. That's integrity, related to integrity. Truthfulness, being a true reflection of reality. One of the biggest things nowadays on the internet is misinformation. Well, misinformation is related to integrity. Um, Nowadays, it's very difficult to know, and especially with artificial intelligence. You see videos and pictures out there, people saying things, but how do you know that that's actually the truth, right? The authenticity, it's another key term that we could say over there. So validity, being factual or logically sound. How do we validate that that user is actually the right user? That's all part of integrity. Accountability, which being responsible or obligated for actions and results. So if somebody does something, let's talk about hacking, right? If somebody break into a system, how do we make that person pay for those actions? Accountability. Sometimes it is very difficult because of all the technologies and VPN, anonymity, people being in different countries, etc. So again, there is a lot to integrity. Responsibility, being in charge of or having control over something or someone. Completeness, having all necessary components or parts, not just having some partial information. So completeness is, it's a very important concept when it comes to integrity. Comprehensiveness, being complete in a scope, so the full inclusion of all needed elements. All of these are concepts that are related to integrity and that need to be protected. Availability, again, depends on both integrity and confidentiality. So this is the other key aspect of the CIA Triad. Without integrity and confidentiality, availability cannot be maintained. But at the same time, if there is no availability, then, well, okay, so if the system is not available, okay, maybe you can protect integrity because it's not available, no one can access it. And also it would be confidential because no one can access it. But then what about the usability, right? Um, so we have to strike a balance between all of this. I mean, yes, I have information. It's completely locked in a safe. It's disconnected for the internet. No one can access, not even yourself. Okay. If there is no usability or accessibility, then that is a problem for a business. How can a business make money, right? Another important aspect of availability is timeliness. Information must be prompt. It must be on time, within a reasonable time frame, or providing low latency response. If you go to Amazon.com to make a purchase and the website takes too long, you may get discouraged and just move away and go to Walmart or go to another store and buy that product, right? Go to La Sirena in Santo Domingo and buy it over there, right? So again, the system needs to be prompt, needs to be on time. So as a security professional, as an IT professional, these are all the things that, again, as we move along in this class, you'll find out that the CIA Triad is not as simple as those three key terms. There's a whole bunch of things behind that, and it gets very, very complex. Okay. Let's talk about another key point too, what it's DAD. DAD is the opposite of opposite of the CIA Triad, right? DAD stands for disclosure, alteration, and destruction, right? And so it's basically, so we want to make sure that information is not disclosed. We want to make sure that information is not altered without authorization. And we also want to make sure that information is not disrupted, right? So again, that's kind of like the opposite of the triad, which is important to understand. The AAA is composed of identification, authentication, authorization, auditing, and accountability. And it's a very important term that needs to be understood in cybersecurity and in any certification. Now, this could be a little bit confusing for some people, because if you notice in the AAA, the identification is not part of it, right? But it's authentication, authorization, and then we have auditing, and we also have accountability. So it's not, so that's why it's a little bit confusing for some people. But basically, that's what it's all about. And we'll talk a lot about this during the class. Key point 3, be able to explain how identification works. Well, identification is this process by which a subject professes an identity, and accountability is initiated. When we talk about a subject, we are talking about an individual, a person, identifying into some service, but we're also talking about, how about a device, a computer, an iPhone, how about a program? So that's why we talk about identification is not only about the person. It's not only the person identifying itself or herself. It's also the program that you are from, the place where you are from, the whatever it is that you're doing, the program, the device that you're coming from, and again, we will expand on all these things as we move along. Now, obviously, when we're talking about a subject, in a lot of the cases, we're talking about an individual. But again, an individual always uses a device. You use a device to access information. So the subject is not just the individual, but most of the time people think of an individual. So a subject must provide an identity, and that identity is in the form of a username, which in the cloud most likely is an email address, to a system to start the process of authentication. So in other words, your identity is the email address, but then you need to authenticate. How do we authenticate? Well, the most common way of authentication is using a password. And then once I'm authenticated, so what am I authorized to do, right? So, and this is, here comes a concept that we're going to be talking about a lot, which is the least privilege. Basically meaning that I'm authorized to do what? I should not be authorized to do anything more than what I need to do my job. And this is the concept of least privilege. We will talk a lot later on. And obviously then we have accountability. If I log into a system and I do something bad, then I need to be held accountable. And this is where that accountability, which is related to auditing, which we also talked a lot. So again, understand the process of authentication. So we talked about identification. Now we talked about I get authenticated. Authentication requires information from the subject that must exactly correspond. I have an email address. That email address, I have a password, or maybe I use multi-factor authentication, and then I authenticate. And then again, and then we get authorized to do things, as I just explained. So let's say, for example, that, so here it's my account on AWS. I have resources on the cloud on AWS. I need to, my identity is my email address, which I have I have cover over here, right? Because I don't want that login to be known. That's a form of what I'm doing there is what? I'm doing confidentiality, secrecy. I don't want that to be known, right? Anyway, so I have my email address. And when I click on next, I'm going to be presented with, okay, to prove that this is you, that account has a password, right? And maybe another form of authentication. And another thing here that we talked a little bit about is that list privilege, an authorization. What is it that you need to do? Most of the time, well, the root user has access to everything on the system. This is a very powerful account and very dangerous. To do daily tasks, well, most likely I do not need to sign in with a root user. So I'm going to sign in with a regular user account to do my daily job. But if I need to do some administration, because I'm a system administrator, and I need to do some work, maybe I need to provision resources for another user, then I may need to do that account temporarily and then log out and log in with the other one. So, but anyway, so depending on how I sign in, I am authorized to do a number of things. So that's what the authorization it's all about, right? So key point 6. Be able to explain the auditing process. Auditing is the programmatic means by which subjects are held accountable for their actions while authenticated on a system through the documentation or recording of subject activities. In other words, when you log into a system, a lot of things are being recorded on the background about the action that you do. When I'm auditing here, I'm not talking about like a person coming in and auditing a system. That's a little bit different thing that we'll talk about that. We're talking about this programmatic means by which, in Windows, you use the event viewer, in Azure, then there is also auditing, the signing log, Microsoft Action, etc. All right. So looking at this example, if I look at this, I'm looking here at the audit logs in Microsoft Azure. Well, so this person came in and did something. So this is, or something was done to this account, right? It could be a programmatic. Actually, this means that it was a service. Some Azure service did something, right? For example, that user was updated. Something was updated on that user account, and it was done through user management. But so again, this is a system audit log, but it could be a user. So let's say that a user comes in and or let's say that somebody, creates an account. Maybe someone get access to a global account, which is kind of like the root accounts in Microsoft Azure. So somebody comes in, hack into Office 365, Azure, Microsoft 365, and then creates an account. Well, that's audited. We can look at it and then we'll see who did it. Or let's say that an internal user, a lot of issues happen with internal users. So let's say that an internal user comes in and create a backdoor account for whatever. Maybe you say, well, if I'm going to be fired, so a lot of administrators that know that they're going to be fired, or they want to prepare themselves if, to do stuff, they create other accounts. So all of that can be audited. That's what we are talking about here. Activity in the sign in. So when you sign into to a device in Azure, there's a lot of information about the user, information about the location where the user is, information about the device where the user is coming from, whether it is an iPhone or Android or a Windows PC or a Mac PC. There is some authentication detail about how did the user sign in? Did the user use MFA or not, right? There was conditional access used to sign in, right? And again, so there's a lot of information that it's audited in a system. So you collect that information, and then that's how accountability and audit and all that stuff is we can relate to that because of all this auditing and all this information, right? So key point number 7, understand the importance of accountability. Security can be maintained only if subjects are held accountable for their actions. So if a user does something bad, so it's important that those people are held accountable. Internally, that's easy done. On the internet with all this hacking, finding the actual culprit, it's not that easy. It can be done, and we see there's a lot of hacking, but there's also a lot of people going to jail. Now, people just pay more attention to the actual hacks. They don't follow up on the news about people that either are going to jail or people are held accountable, but maybe the hack happened in a country where it happens all the time, that hackers in North Korea or Russia or China hack institutions, and both private and government institutions in the United States. And in many cases, the United States government knows who perpetrated those actions, but they have no jurisdiction in Russia. Russia is not going to send a cyber criminal to the United States, neither China nor North Korea or Iran. So, but a lot of hacking that happens in the United States, a lot of people go to jail. So anyways, but accountability is important, but again, it's not easy because there are many technologies that make it easy for people to hide their tracks and the dark web, VPN, and that kind of stuff. Effective accountability relies on the capability to prove a subject's identity and track their activities. Identity is a really big problem on the internet. It is, sorry, it is really difficult to actually prove the identity of peoples and devices and stuff like that. Really, really difficult. And actually, that's why we'd say nowadays that identity is the new perimeter, because the bigger problems in cybersecurity nowadays is actually identity. It used to be traditionally that the perimeter, having the routers and all that stuff, and all those rules and blocking people, that was enough. But nowadays, again, you could be anywhere in the world to access systems. So again, we'll talk a lot about this in the identity and access management module. Point 9, be able to explain non-repudiation. Non-repudiation ensures that the subject of an activity or event cannot deny that the event occurred. Imagine, for example, that I don't know, that someone steals something and it's caught on camera. Like it happens all the time. The cameras everywhere. So they go to court, and the person obviously will say, "Oh no, I didn't do that. I didn't steal that. I didn't steal that TV, that money, whatever." And the lawyer comes in. Oh, okay. And then, judge, can I, show this video? And then you show the video and you see the person. Obviously, you're gonna go, whoops. You cannot say that you didn't do it because you're there. You're doing it, right? Now, when it comes to computers, obviously it's not that easy. I mean, having a video, yeah, that's it. But we're talking about data and stuff like that, and sometimes it's not that easy to prove that. So non-repudiation prevents a subject from claiming not to have sent a message, for example, not to have performed an action. In email, for example, we use a digital signature, for example, to prove that, well, that email actually came from you. Now, you could say, well, somebody stole my password or somebody stole my credentials. Well, yes, but that's accountability. It is your responsibility to protect your credentials, right? So you're going to be held accountable. It is not an excuse that, well, somebody stole my password, or, obviously it could happen. There are many ways that, passwords are stolen, and it may or may not be your fault. So being responsible nowadays when it comes to a credential is having a strong password and using MFA wherever possible. Okay. So a single username, email address, and a password, it's not enough. And even with MFA, it's not 100%, but it is a lot more secure. 97% of security incidents, I would say, could be resolved if everyone were to use MFA in everywhere where they authenticated. Because again, according to many reports, from 95 to 97% of all security incidents start with a phishing, start with, with identity-related problems, if you want to call it that way. DocuSign is a very popular software that is used for signing. Today I went to the bank. I went to do some banking stuff, some changes, and I had to sign in a document. Okay, I had to just go in a tablet and just drop my signature over there. So if later on, I went to the bank and say, "Oh no, I didn't authorize this. I didn't do that." The bank would come in and say, "Well, but so look at that. This and that day you came in and that's your signature." So there is electronic signature that it's being used in a lot of documentation nowadays. So that's non-repudiation. You cannot say that it wasn't you because that's your signature. So it's important that when we design a security program, that we keep in mind, how to protect against something like that. Okay. Let's talk about now point number 9. Know about defense in depth. So defense in depth, which is also known as layering, it's simply the use of multiple controls in a series, used together, not just rely on a single thing. Using a multi-layer solution allows for numerous different controls to guard against whatever threats come to pass. So if we look at this, um, starting from the top down. Here we have the policies, procedures, and awareness and education, all that stuff that comes from top management, senior management. There should be any security program should start with policies, procedures, and awareness, procedures, standards, and all that kind of stuff. There should be a policy, and then that policy should mandate, what needs to be done. Now, obviously, you need physical security. Everything is broken if there's no physical security. If someone gets a hold of your PC or a hold of your phone physically, if your phone is stolen, if a server is stolen, then doesn't matter what you have. There are ways to basically break into almost anything. Well, if you have encryption, it may not be that easy. In some cases, impossible to access data in your devices. So if you have most company that use laptops, it is imperative that those laptops are encrypted, because if someone loses a laptop, it is very easy to get that hard drive connected through USB on another computer and access the data. And most likely there's going to be a lot of information on your email, on your logs, on your, including passwords, because people type anything in their computer, right? We have everything in there. So if we lose physical access to our devices, that's it. Everything it's lost, right? Encryption can help a lot. Okay, so it is very important that we use encryption because of that, which is it's not used as it should be. We need to protect the network. We need to have those routers and switches. The biggest problem with network nowadays is misconfiguration. Okay, so again, yes, we need to have routers and switches and stuff like that, and they must be configured properly. That's another things that we need. Again, we need to protect our computer, our endpoints. We need to protect those devices with antivirus software, right? Like Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. It's an example that comes to mind, which is a very good product. We need to protect those applications, the applications that we use. Remote desktop, for example, is a very common attack vector. A lot of the ransomware attacks, it's in somehow related. People get access remotely to those computers, right? So we need to protect those things. We need to protect those the devices. And actually, I would say that instead of device over here, we need to protect the data, because I would put in terms of the computer. So maybe the device I would put actually here, devices, computers, etc. And then ultimately, what we want to protect is the data. There's a lot of ways to protecting that data, like maybe not giving access to people that are not supposed to have the access. Again, using encryption and that kind of stuff. But again, very important to understand the concept of defense in depth. Okay. Point 9, be able to explain the concept of abstraction. Abstraction is used to collect similar elements into groups, classes, or roles that are assigned security controls, restrictions, or permission as a collective. It adds efficiency to carrying out a security plan. In other words, so let's say, for example, that you are going to protect the computers and devices in your company. Maybe you group together all the servers, right? The domain controllers could be in one place, the SQL service in another place, or you could collectively say, okay, the protection that I need for servers like domain controllers and Exchange and SQL and Oracle servers, etc., are different from, let's put them all together so that we can put policies around those groups of controls. Now, all the Windows laptops, we're going to put that into a group, or we can say servers, laptops, in mobile devices like phones and Android, for example. And then you can, just to give you a simple example, obviously there's a lot more to abstraction than that, but just to give you an example. Abstraction involves simplifying the representation of complex security systems or concepts, emphasizing key elements while hiding unnecessary technical detail. Another example of abstraction, let's say a router. A router is a very complex device, and there's a lot of packets and things going on. But to be honest with you, you don't actually need to understand all those intricate, complex things that goes in a router. So what you need to, it's a way to log into the router and be able to configure the router properly, right? So that the configuration is not so difficult, right? By hiding all that complexity and then being able to configure a router properly, not make it so complex, well, that helps security. So that's part of the abstraction concept that we are talking about here. So just hide those unnecessary technical details, right? And then just concentrate on what needs to be done to make sure that that device is and there are hundreds and thousands of examples that could be given about that. But again, this is a term that will definitely appear in the certification. So make sure that you understand how to use it, where to use it, and that kind of stuff. Understand the data hiding. Data hiding is exactly what it sounds like. It's preventing data from being discovered or accessed by a subject. And again, by an individual. Again, we're going to be used a lot, the term subject and object in this class. But keep in mind that when we are talking about subject, we're not just talking about a person. That a subject can also be a program, or it could be a device. It is often a key element in security control as well as in programming. Hiding. Now, obviously, don't just hide a password in, let's say, in an SQL database, because that's not really good security, right? If you put the password in plain text and you just kind of hide it so that you're hoping that no one would find it, there are ways, and again, a lot of security incidents happen because of that. Data hiding is the act of intentionally positioning data so that it is not viewable or accessible to an authorized subject. And now, so I want to emphasize that data hiding is not exactly security through obscurity, which is the idea of not informing a subject about an object being present and thus hoping that the subject will not discover the object. So security through obscurity basically means that we don't tell somebody that that thing is there, but you could find it if you wanted to. Now, hiding is intentionally. We really want you to, not find that thing. So that's why they are related, but they're not exactly the same. And these are the questions that are a little bit difficult, because sometimes you're gonna get multiple option questions where you need to be very specific, and the question says, choose the best option, right? You need to understand exactly these details in order to answer those questions. Another key term here is encryption, which is the science of hiding the meaning or intent of communication from unintended recipients. So when you encrypt communication or you encrypt data, basically what you do, you make that data unreadable, so that if somebody, in the example of a laptop, if a laptop hard drive, it's encrypted, so that data, in a way, it's hidden. It's user cannot access that data unless they can decrypt the hard drive. Now, it's very important that in the exam, they're gonna try to trick you but when it comes to confidentiality, the main way to protect confidentiality is actually encryption. Make sure that they're gonna put it in different ways, but encryption is and then the main way to protect integrity is hashing, which we will talk about that later on in the class, but very important that you understand that concept. Key point 12, know about security boundaries. A security boundary is the line of intersection between any two areas, subnets or environments that have different security requirements or needs. For example, in an enterprise network, you may have the regular IT systems, right? And then you have SCADA, or the industrial control systems and stuff like that. Well, all of these are boundaries. You may want to make sure that you have firewalls in place to protect so that those IT systems may not be able to access those SCADA systems, right? So this is related to kind of segmentation, which is extremely important in protecting information and devices and computers nowadays. So again, security boundaries. And this could also be in programming. There's a lot of security boundary there. But again, it's important that you understand that concept, because that's going to be in the exam. Key point 13, understand security governance. Security governance is the collection of practices related to supporting, defining, and redirecting the security efforts of an organization. So some key elements of security governance are policy development, risk management, compliance, roles and responsibilities, security awareness programs, incident response programs, continuous monitoring, right? We never finish in a security program. We never finish completing a security program. So there always have to be continuous monitoring, continuous improvement. Security metrics, right? Really important. We need to measure the effectiveness of security initiatives. Just because we have defense in depth and we have all these controls, that's not enough. I mean, yes, we have all these controls, but how secure are those controls? If you don't have metrics, if you don't measure the effectiveness, then that's not a good thing, right? So we gotta make sure that we have some measure. Security culture. Foster a culture of security awareness. This is extremely important. To be honest with you, I think that most problems in most companies, it's because there's no security culture. In a lot of companies, they think, oh, well, that's the IT department. Oh, they'll take care of that. Well, actually, security is everyone's responsibility. So everyone, from the person that mops the floor, the person that cleans the office, even if that person doesn't have a computer account, but they have physical access. The person that cleans an office can do a lot of damage. What about if, and actually this has happened, where someone approaches one of those cleaning people and say, hey, they pay a lot of money to take a USB drive, go to this office, take that USB drive, connect it to a computer today, and then tomorrow, just go bring me that USB device and I'll give you $10,000 or $1,000 or $50,000, depending on the value of that asset, right? So again, a security culture is really important. Leadership involvement. This is extremely important. There is no good security program if leadership is not involved. It involves executives and the board in security. So security must come from the top to bottom. So everything must start at the top, right? with governance. And then, of course, vendor management. So again, really important to understand the security governance, but these are some of the key components. Point 14, know about third-party governance. Third-party governance is the system of external entity oversight that may be mandated by law, regulation, industry standards, contractual obligation, or licensing requirements. A lot of incidents today happen not because the company was hacked directly, but it was hacked through a third-party company. And there are many examples on the news. So, third-party governance is extremely important. You need to understand the vendors. You need to know the vendors that you do business with and what is their security practices, what is their security culture, right? So the actual method of governance may vary, but it generally involves an outside investigator or auditor. So you may want to audit some of your third-party providers. And again, companies that are on the public sector in the United States, they are by law audited every year, right? So private companies are not audited, but public companies are. So it's important to keep that in mind. Understand documentation review. Documentation review is the process of reading the exchange materials and verifying them against the standards and expectations. So in many situations, especially related to government and military in the United States, right, or contractors, failing to provide sufficient documentation to meet requirements of third-party governance can result in a loss or voiding of authorization to operate, which is referred to as ATL. So in other words, a lot of contractors that work for the federal government in the United States, documentation is paramount. There is tons of documentation. I have been through, participated in companies that go through this review that need to comply with certain, like the CMMC, for example. And to be honest with you, tons of documentation. Documentation is really, really important in cybersecurity, especially when you work for, say, contractor for the government, for the United States, which is part of what I do. Understand alignment of security function to business strategy, goals, missions, and objectives. So security management planning ensures the proper creation, implementation, and enforcement of a security policy. So this is key to almost everything that you do. Security management planning aligns the security functions for the strategy, the goals, the mission, the objectives of the organization. So we must always keep in mind that security and IT are support functions, okay? And that everything that we do must be aligned to the strategy, the goals, and the missions of the organization. We need to understand what those strategies, goals, missions, and objectives are in order to properly protect the company. Because if we don't know what the strategy and goals and missions of the company are, then how can we protect a company efficiently? So they need to be aligned. In other words, whatever you do needs to come from the business. The business is what tells what the business requirements are. It's not the other way around. Okay. So this includes designing and implementing security based on business cases. So when a new security initiative is going to be implemented, there needs to be a business case, right? You also need to be aware of budget restrictions and also scarcity of resources, which is a big problem nowadays. There is a scarcity of money for security initiatives, and that includes hiring the right people, or even enough people, right? So it's important to keep that in mind. Point number 7, know what a business case is. Okay, a business case is usually a documented argument or a stated position in order to define a need to make a decision or to take some form of action. To make a business case is to demonstrate a business specific need to alter an existing process or choose an approach to a business task. A business case is often made to justify the start of a new project, especially a project related to security. So some elements of so let's say that we are going to a company that does not use MFA, and they have some Office 365, for example. And let's say that, you come into this company and you realize that, wow, this company is using Office 365, but they sign into Office 365 using just their email address and password. Well, this is a big problem because remember, identity is the new perimeter. A lot of issues today happens because of identity. So if you want to mitigate the risks that this company is incurring, you come in, say, okay, so here is an example of a business case: enhancing security and mitigating risk through multi-factor authentication. It's very important that in any business case that you are going to engage in, these words are important because that's what the business want to hear about: the risks. What are the risks to my company, and how do we mitigate the risks, and how much will it take to do that, right? So those are and these are, I guess, that some of the things that a lot of IT people lack is it's being able to talk the business, to talk to management, to talk to a senior executive, because the senior executive does not care about those technical jargon that we IT people sometimes come with. They want to know about, okay, what is the risk? How much is it going to cost? And how much is my investment? Is this something worth it? Should I invest in this? So obviously, any business case should have an introduction. Okay, so an introduction to, as an organization continues to grow in a digitally connected environment, the need for robust cybersecurity measures becomes increasingly critical. This business case advocates the implementation of multi-factor authentication as an essential security enhancement to protect our sensitive data and systems. That's a very good introduction. And by the way, one of our greatest allies nowadays is ChatGPT. This is ChatGPT. There are a lot of templates out there, but when I need to create a business case or anything like that, ChatGPT is it's wonderful. Okay, so you can just tell ChatGPT, hey, I need to do this and that, and then you can get a template. Obviously, you need to adjust it and to a specific needs, but it is ChatGPT is great. So business need, you need to specify what the business need are, right? The rising cyber threats, okay? You need to talk about that. You could say something like, with the proliferation of cyber threats such as phishing, blah, 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 password attacks, and credential theft, relying solely on passwords possesses a significant risk to our organization. Then there may be a regulatory compliance that mandate that you need to do that. Like, for example, GDPR, which we will talk later, or HIPAA, or others, right? Remote work threats. And again, after COVID, remote work, it's a very important thing. A lot of company in some form or another had remote people. So what that means is that multi-factor authentication is more important than ever after COVID because of all this remote work, right? Now, let's talk about the benefits of MFA. Then you could talk about enhanced security, reduce unauthorized access, compliance adherence, protection of customer trust, cost savings in the long run. So business people love to hear about this. Okay. You could, for example, look at examples of hacking to companies similar to yours and find out how much it costs the company to recover from an attack, right? So if it is in the zero trust area, so we talk about zero trust, and one of the principles of zero trust is that we need to assume breach. Assume breach basically means that we need to be aware, conscious that it is most likely that we are going to be breached, that we're going to be hacked. Any company, right? And so if we're going to be hacked, okay, so if we are hacked, let's do an exercise. If we are hacked, let's say that we're going to lose business data, and we're going to lose, we could easily lose $100,000 in revenue because of a hack. Obviously, that's all unique to every organization. So, but there's a lot of cases out there. There's a lot of history, right? It's a lot of stuff on the internet. But if you agree that you may lose, 100, 200,000 in a hack, and that you can mitigate that hacking implementing MFA, and then let's say that MFA is going to cost you $10,000. Well, I don't know. You decided. Is it worth it? What about if you could lose 500,000 or 1 million or 2 millions? Well, then maybe it is worth it. Maybe it's not. And those are business decisions, right? Usually the business leadership, executives make those decisions, and then we, the folks in IT and cybersecurity, then we go ahead and implement. But anyway, so just give you an example of how a business plan will work. Now, you also need to talk about, okay, what is it going to take? So we talked about the what, we talked about the why. Now we need to talk about the how. Okay, how is this going to be done, right? So is there going to be business interruption, right? So what's the nuances of this? So you need to talk about the assessment, the selection of MFA solution. There are many products out there, but if you offer Office 365, well, Microsoft Office MFA with Office 365 for free. It's part of the product. It's right there, right? So you don't need to spend a penny on that. So most likely you can use that. There are cases in which if you use I don't know, other products, maybe you cannot use MFA in Microsoft because of whatever, right? It's many complexity in many companies. But anyway, so user training. Well, the user have always just log in with the username and password. But let's say that you decide to use the Microsoft Authenticator app. Now the user needs to download that app on a phone, okay? And so there's some user training involved. Sometimes it's not that easy. It sounds easy, oh yeah, MFA, but depending on how large and how complex your company is, this could be a huge project, and all of these things need to be taken into consideration. Some of these projects must be phased out. So roll out that in phases. So again, once you do that, then you do kind of like a conclusion and a summary and that kind of stuff. But this is a very well concise business case that you can use as a template to create a business case for other cybersecurity initiatives. Okay. Key point 18. Understand security management planning. Security management is based on 3 types of plans: a strategic, tactical, and operation. A strategic plan is a long-term plan that is fairly stable. it defines the organizational goals, missions, and objectives. A strategic plan should include a risk assessment. The tactical plan is a midterm plan developed to provide more details on accomplishing the goals set forth in the strategic plan. Some examples of tactical plans are project plans, acquisition plans, hiring plans, budget plans, maintenance plans, support plans, and system development plans. Operational plans are short-term and highly detailed plans based on the strategic and tactical plans. Okay, examples of operational plans are training plans, system deployment plans, and product design plans. So again, security is a continuous process. With the information provided over here, you should be able to tackle any questions that they ask you about this. So just know the difference between, it has to do on the length and the detail of the plan, okay? So just keep that in mind. Key point 19, know the elements of a formalized security policy structure. To create a comprehensive security plan, you need the following items in place. Security policy, we talked about that. Really important that you have security policy, standards, baselines, guidelines, and procedures. So you need to understand, how this comes to relate to each other. Okay, so a security policy is high-level document outlining security goals. The purpose is to establish the overall security framework, and they should be reviewed maybe on a yearly basis. A lot of companies don't do that, but anyway, things change. But security policies are written in a way that they don't need to be changed periodically. Okay, standards are specific and mandatory requirements. Okay, so a standard could be all Windows, all laptops should be installed with Windows 11 and the latest updates, for example. Well, that would be a standard. So all computers or all iPhones must be updated to at least iOS 17. So that's a standard. So that's mandatory, right? That's specific. A baseline is a minimum security configuration. So if you use, for example, let's say MEM, the Microsoft endpoint management, and let's say that you use iPhones and it could be Androids, whatever, you can create baseline, like, well, the baseline, it needs to have this version, everybody needs to have a code to access the phone, and the code must be at least 6 digits, and blah, 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 blah. So, but again, a baseline is the minimum security configuration that a device must have in order to be used in the company. So it sets the foundational level of security. And to be honest with you, a lot of, when we talk about this security frameworks, that's basically what they do. So they have this security configurations in place. But anyway, it's important that you have baselines. The service organization, what is a baseline when in terms of patches, in terms of software, in terms of the updates, etc. Right? So important that you do that. Guidelines recommend the best practices, offers flexibility, implementation. For example, if you use framework like NIST or COVID or ISO 27001, well, those are guidelines, right? Kind of like recommend the best practices. And then finally, a lot of the stuff that you do, everything in cybersecurity, you need to have a procedure on how to do it. And this is a step-by-step instruction for tasks. And the purpose is a specific guidance for policy execution. So again, all these terms are extremely important in cybersecurity and also in any certification that you take. With this information, you should be able to tackle any questions. Now, when we come to when it comes to cyber security policies, we usually say you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Okay, there's a lot of material out there that is freely available. For example, the Science Institute have this security policy templates that you can download. So let's say, for example, that you want to create, everybody should have at least an acceptable use policy. So you can download this policy. You can download it in Word. This is the PDF version. You can download in Word, and then you change all these things and you adjust this to your company. You can change all this wording, and this is freely available for you to use. So you don't have to start from scratch. Here you have the overview of the policy, the purpose, the scope, and then the policy itself. And then it goes into general use and ownership, security and proprietary information, the acceptable use, systems and network. So this is like a general acceptable use that has a lot of things. There are other policies that are more specific, but this is a really good starting point. Okay, so having a policy for this is extremely important, and there are tons of policies that you can use from the SAN Institute. They are grouped by categories over here. And again, so this is a great resource when it comes to cyber for security policies. Okay. Understand organizational processes. Security governance needs to address every aspect of an organization. This includes the organizational process of acquisitions, divestiture. Oh, that's a mouthful right there. And governance committees. Okay. Divestitures. Ooh. For some reason, I can't pronounce that word right now. Anyways, so, and I have been in many of these in previous companies. So, but anyways, so when evaluating a third party for your security integration, consider the following processes. On-site assessment. It's important that you, in many cases, that you visit the site of the organization to interview personnel and observe their operating habits. Now, this is not everybody can do this or does this, but some big companies do that. Document exchange and review, investigate the means by which data sets and documentation are exchanged, as well as the formal process by which they perform assessment and reviews, process policy review, third-party audit, et cetera, et cetera. So, but these are key points to keep in mind when evaluating a third party for your security integration and process to consider. 21. So we are almost there. So 25 points. So like 4 more. Understand key security roles. The primary security roles are senior manager, security professional, asset owner, custodian, user, and auditor. Right. So obviously, a senior manager, they're responsible for the overall security strategy and resource allocation. Right. Really important. You can't do much on a security initiative or project if the senior manager is not on board. Also, the senior manager, it's the CEO of a company is the responsible of the overall security program. In a big company, when there is a hack, and if that hack is because of negligence, those are the people that need to go to court, right? And it happens, right? So those are the responsible people. So senior manager is the ultimate responsible for the security strategy and governance of a company. A security professional, and there are different, security professional. The CISO, it's one of them, for example. Designing, implementing, and monitoring security controls. That would be the role of the CISSP. And then you have a security engineer, you have a security analyst or a SOC analyst, et cetera, et cetera. But those are the main roles. Asset owner, responsible decision making for a specific information asset. Let's say, for example, the human resources department. There is a lot of confidential information. Well, the director of the human resources department is actually the owner of the information for that department. They are the ones who decide who needs access to what and what level of authorization they need, right? So, and then the custodian. The custodian is normally the IT department. The IT is the daily protection and maintenance of information access. So, IT department is ultimately the who protect and maintain those information access. But in most cases, they're not the owner. The owner are the heads of the different departments. And then we have the user. Well, the user is anyone in the company that uses that information or that data, right? So, and again, so nowadays, everyone has a role in so security is a shared responsibility. Everyone has a piece that need to put into in an effort, right? So the use really important. And then we have auditors, which especially in public companies, they come in a year basis and they assess and evaluate the effectiveness of security controls. Because yes, you could have a lot of security controls, but how effective are they? Well, you don't want the IT department or the security department to actually assess the effectiveness of those controls because they're going to be biased, right? So that's why you bring an audit to do that. Know the basis of security control frameworks. We'll talk more about this later. But anyway, so ISO IEC 27001 and 27002, information security management systems. Key components are risk assessment, security policies and controls, et cetera, et cetera. NIST is really it's used a lot in the industry, not just the United States government, but companies, private companies all over the world. And it's a framework for improving critical infrastructure and cybersecurity. The key components of the NIST cybersecurity framework are identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, which we will cover. We will talk a little bit more about that later on. It was developed by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, and very likely you're going to get a question about that. CIS control, critical security controls, really popular. It's a prioritized set of best practices for cybersecurity. It has 20, actually, in the latest version, I believe that it's only 18 controls rather than 20. It was developed by the Center for Internet Security, CIS, and it focuses on practical implementation of security measures to address common threats. Okay. Microsoft, for example, in their products in Microsoft Azure, use this as a benchmark. They use the CIS security controls. They also use stuff from NIST, and usually company use a combination of this framework. I mean, no framework has it all. So basically, company use it, but you have to start from somewhere. So any cybersecurity program, you don't have to start from scratch, and this is what these frameworks do. So you have this baseline from which you can take stuff and implement it to your specific needs. COVID, the control objectives for information and related technologies. It's a governance and management of enterprise IT. Some of the key components are framework, process, and maturity models. It was developed by ISACA, and it aligns IT goals with business objectives, ensuring effective IT governance. Really important. Most likely, this is going to be a question about this as well. So ITIL, the Information Technology Infrastructure Library, is a best practice for IT service management, etc. Really important as well. PCI DSS, which is the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard for people who handle credit cards. FISMA, which is the Federal Information Security Management Act. and a security framework for federal government information systems. I used to work for the state of Massachusetts, and the stuff that we did, basically everything, we had to adhere to the FISMA, to this act. All right, key component, risk management, compliance, relevant, etc. So important that you understand those, the basic of those frameworks over there. All right, point 23, understand due diligence and due care. Due diligence is establishing a plan, a policy, and a process to protect the interest of an organization. So if you have policies, procedures, if you have used this framework, well, you are doing due diligence. But the fact that you use those things, now you actually need to practice that. So due care is practicing the individual activities that maintain due diligence. So let's say that you have a policy, and the policy says that, well, all users must use MFA. Okay? Well, the policy says that, but you actually never implemented MFA. So you did the due diligence by having the policy, but you never finished this project. So due care is lacking over there. If there is a hack, if you need to go to court, and then when an auditor comes in and they investigate, well, yes, they have the policy, but they actually never implemented the project because, well, senior management found out that, hey, it was going to be too expensive and they didn't want to spend that money, right? You're going to be held responsible, right? Because you didn't, do due care. So due diligence is knowing what should be done and planning for it. So we know that we need to have MFA because of all the things that we have already talked about, but we never did it for whatever reason, right? Maybe because, well, there were all the projects and, oh, we're going to do it next year because of the budget constraint. Well, you lacking due care. And again, you could be held accountable, all right? Know the basis of threat modeling. Threat modeling is the security process where potential threats are identified, categorized, and analyzed. Threat modeling can be performed as a proactive measure during design and development, or as a reactive measure once a product has been deployed. And obviously, it should be done as a proactive measure. Okay, security should be in all, management, in all initiatives, in all projects. Security should be part of it from the beginning. Key concepts include assets, attackers, software, stride, past, avast, etc. You may get a question. So stride is a threat modeling model from Microsoft, and each letter on the model means something. So the S stands for spoofing, which involves an attacker pretending to be someone else, like in phishing. For example, unauthorized users gaining access to a system by pretending to be legitimate users. Well, in all your software initiative, in your security program, how do you protect against spoofing? Okay, using this model. Number two, the T stands for tampering. Tampering threats involve unauthorized modification of data, which basically is integrity. We talked about that, protecting integrity. This could include altering configuration settings, manipulating files, or changing the content of messages. Okay, so stride then accounts for integrity, right? Repudiation. Repudiation threats involve the denial of actions or events. We talked about the non-repudiation before. For instance, a user performing an action and later denying responsibility, making it challenging to track back activities. So if you design software, in your designing, you need to account for all these things. 4 is I, which is the information disclosure. This threat category refers to the unauthorized access or exposure of information, which is in the CIA Triad, the confidentiality piece that we have talked about. It includes scenarios where sensitive data is accessed or disclosed to individuals who should not have that information. The D stands for denial of service, or DOS. And denial of service threats aim to disrupt the availability of systems or service. And then finally, the E stands for elevation of privilege. And this threat involves an attacker gaining high-level access or privilege higher than they are authorized, right? So in a lot of attacks, the hacker gain access to a regular user account, right? And then through tactics and techniques, they're able to elevate that to an admin account, or like the root account, right? Well, the admin account, let's say, for example, that someone gain access to Microsoft 365 as a regular user, and they're able to elevate to a global administrator. Well, a global administrator has access to everything. So imagine all the damage that that user could do. So again, when you design security products, this is a great way to account for all those things. And again, so Stride, it's very popular in use by Microsoft. How to identify threats? Well, there are a gazillion number of threats out there, right? There's an infinite number of threats. What approach do you follow? Well, some company focus on assets, all the assets in your company, right? So one way is to identify your critical assets, because remember, not all assets are created equal. They don't have the same value. Obviously, you want to put more effort on those critical assets, right? An Oracle system with a database with all the company information, intellectual property, for example. If you are a technology company and you manufacture, create things, then if the bad guys were able to get a hold of your intellectual property, you're gonna be in trouble, right? You may focus on attackers. So some organizations are able to identify potential attackers, and they can identify the threats that they represent based on the attacker's motivations, goals, or tactics, techniques, and procedures, or what are called TTPs, right? You can do that. Or you could focus on the software. If an organization develops software, it can consider potential threat against the software. In reality, you can combine the three. A lot of companies, use the three of these, okay? Depending on the size and the size of the company. But anyway, so those are ways of doing that. And so I think, yeah. So finally, on this chapter, on this module, the final point is the understand supply chain risk management, which is SCRM concepts, right? So SCRM is a means to ensure that all the vendors or links in the supply chain are reliable, trustworthy, reputable, and organization that disclose their practices and security requirements to the business partners. So CRM includes evaluating risk associated with hardware, software, services, performing third-party assessment and monitoring, establishing minimum security requirements, and enforcing service level requirements. Okay, so some key components are reliability assurance, trustworthiness assessment, engagement with reputable organizations, transparency and disclosure, security requirements, open communication, risk assessment, and compliance with standards. And there you have it. So this is the end of this first module. There are going to be, actually, this is one of 20. There's going to be 20 modules like this that will cover the 8 domains of the CISSP security. Some references. So this is my webpage now. it's the site, it's in Spanish. I have not, I'm in the process of making it in English as well. But so for those of you who speak Spanish, there's a lot of stuff over here. As a matter of fact, we are starting a new class very soon. So take a look at that information. And it's, you know, for a class like this is basically almost free. But anyway, so if, you know, at the time of recording this class has not started yet. So by the time you watch this may be history. Anyways, so other, let's see, here is the page for the ISC Square. So a lot of information about that. So about the exam. So anything you need to know about the exam, where to take it, how much does it cost, how many questions, everything, just go there. You know, NIST, cybersecurity controls, SANS, we talked about that. So anyways, so thank you for watching this video. These videos are free. And the only thing that I ask is that if you find this useful, interesting to you, just give me a like or leave me a comment on my YouTube channel so that, you know, there's a lot of effort put into producing, you know, these videos, and that will motivate me to continue doing this work. All right. Well, so that's all, and I hope to see you on the next video.